They say coffee is a love language. If that's true, mine's been speaking fluent disrespect for 3 years straight. Every morning before the 8:15 chaos of the office, I stop by Drip Society, a coffee shop with exposed brick walls, indie playlists, and baristas who wear too many rings and too little empathy. And every morning, without fail, I order the same thing. Oat milk latte, 2 pumps of vanilla, name's Maggie. And every morning, without fail, I get a cup labeled Marilyn. At first, I thought it was just a mix-up, a busy barista, a loud morning, human error. But then it kept happening. Every single time. Marilyn, they'd call, and I'd raise my hand because that was me, apparently. At this point, I've lived an entire second life as a woman named Marilyn who drinks her coffee lukewarm because she's too polite to correct anyone. The barista responsible was a girl named Tina, all eyeliner wings and ironic tattoos. She had that cool girl energy that made everyone else feel like they were in middle school again. Tina didn't smile, she smirked. She didn't hand you your drink, she presented it like it was a performance art piece. The first time I noticed her handwriting, a neat, sharp, a little cruel, I thought, okay, maybe she just doesn't hear well. So I said it louder. Maggie. Maggie. She nodded, chewing gum. 5 minutes later, my cup said, Marilyn. I laughed about it to my coworker Zoe that morning. She shrugged. Maybe she thinks you look like a Marilyn. Yeah, I said. If Marilyn worked in spreadsheets and had adult acne flare-ups. But that day, something new happened. When I picked up my drink, the guy in line next to me chuckled. He was tall. Probably mid-30s, scruffy in a deliberate way. The kind of man who owned more than one denim jacket and made it work. He said, maybe she just really likes the name. I looked up and he smiled. I'm Jacob, by the way. Marilyn, I said, raising the cup like a salute. Nice to meet you. He laughed, that easy, charming kind of laugh that makes you momentarily forget you're holding a cup of liquid injustice. We started running into each other there more often after that. Sometimes at 8:10, sometimes 8:25. Always at Drip Society. He was an architect, of course he was. He wore rolled-up sleeves and sketched things on napkins while waiting for his order. He had that patient kind of energy that could make a traffic jam feel romantic. And every morning, Tina would make eye contact with me, say nothing, and hand me a cup that said, Marilyn. Sometimes it was Marlin. Once it was Maddie. Another time, Margie. At this point, I was one typo away from a full identity crisis. I'd catch Jacob smirking when he saw the name. Still not Maggie? Nope, I'd sigh. But at least she's consistent. Consistency is key, he said, winking. I told myself it didn't bother me, that a wrong name on a cup didn't define me. But when it happens every day for 3 years, it stops being a mistake and starts being a message. The message, you don't matter enough to spell correctly. There's a strange power dynamic between customer and barista. They know your habits, your caffeine level, your Monday face, your breakup face, your I didn't sleep eyes. And when that power is used maliciously and like a microdose of humiliation, you feel it. Tina's smirk said, I see you trying and I'm still in control. I wasn't sure what I'd done to offend her. Maybe nothing. Maybe existing was enough. Or maybe, and this is what my friend Zoe later theorized, she didn't like the way Jacob smiled at me. But that was ridiculous. Jacob and I weren't even a thing. I'd just gotten out of a long, messy relationship that left me allergic to romance and Google Calendar invites. Jacob was safe, flirty in a harmless way. Our thing was coffee banter, caffeine-level flirting, nothing else. Still, it was hard to ignore how Tina's tone sharpened whenever we spoke near the counter. She'd accidentally hand my drink to someone else. Or she'd call Marilyn and place it Jews out of reach until Jacob offered to grab it for me. One morning, I caught her eyes flick toward him, assessing, calculating. When he smiled at me, she looked like she'd bitten into a lemon. By late November, my patience was wearing thin. Deadlines, dark mornings, and daily doses of passive-aggressive caffeine. So when Tina called out Miriam and then poured my latte wrong, extra foam, half cold, I finally said something. Actually, it's Maggie. I told her, smiling politely. Just Maggie. She blinked at me. Right, sorry, Marilyn. The people in line laughed softly. Jacob was behind me. I heard him exhale awkwardly. I picked up my drink, smiled like it didn't sting, and walked out. Outside, I dumped the entire latte in the trash. That night, I lay awake replaying it all. The names, the smirk, the way Jacob didn't say anything. And that was the moment I realized this wasn't about coffee anymore. This was about being made small. Every woman knows that feeling, being quietly diminished, one mistake at a time, until you start apologizing for existing. Well, I was done apologizing. And though I didn't know it then, I was also done buying coffee from anyone who couldn't spell my name. Because someday soon, they'd be buying it from me. The next morning, I tried a new tactic. Pre-order on the app, type MÄGGIE in 18-point clarity, add a cheerful note, thank you, and arrive exactly when the app said my drink would be ready. The screen flashed, picked up before I even reached the counter. Hi, I said to Tina, who was leaning on the espresso machine like it was a throne. I think my mobile order. She slid a cup toward me without looking. Marilyn. Of course. I put MÄGGIE on the app, I said, keeping my voice sweet, corporate, unshakable. She finally glanced up, lashes sharp as razors. We read vibes, not apps. Behind me, someone snorted. I didn't turn to see who. The worst thing about being humiliated in public is the strain your neck takes pretending you're too evolved to notice. Jacob was 3 people back, hands in his pockets, doing that half-smile men do when they want to look supportive without entering the blast radius. I told myself not to care. This wasn't his fight. It wasn't even a fight. It was breakfast theater. I took the cup, sipped, and nearly winced. Hot, then suddenly, not. Like she steamed the milk just long enough to say she tried. On the way out, I tossed the cup. I told myself it was because I prefer my coffee scalding, not because I'd rather go uncaffeinated than absorb one more performative mistake. At the office, our creative director assigned me a brand campaign with a launch window that made time itself laugh. My team brought me solutions. I brought them bagels and pep talks. By noon, I'd hit a stride that felt like running downhill in roller skates. When Zoe swung by my desk, she assessed my face and said, "Drip Society again?" She called me Vibes, I said. Is that a noun now? Apparently. Jacob was there. Apparently. Zoe perched on my desk. Maggie, you know I adore you, but I have to say this. You are not obligated to be chill. Chill is my core competency. Chill is how women get turned into doormats with good skincare. She shoved a lip balm at me like a prescription. Use this. And maybe a tiny dose of rage. I grinned, swiped the balm, promised to consider rage in Q3. By Friday, Tina had upgraded from wrong names to performance art. She forgot my order entirely once. Everybody from the 8:20 rush came and went while I hovered like a ghost at my own wake. When I finally asked, she blinked hard like she'd been awakened from a dream of being beloved. Oh, she said. Did you still want that? In line, Jacob shifted. Hey, if they lost it, I'm fine, I said quickly, because kindness from a bystander can feel like pity with latte art. She poured the new shot, steamy, loud, and then, with surgical precision, she nudged the pitcher just enough that a satin ribbon of milk spilled over the lid and onto my sleeve. Not a disaster, just visible, strategic. Oh, she chirped. So clumsy of me. I looked down at the stain blooming over the cuff of my blazer. Camel, tailored, expensive in the way that says promoted herself. Then I looked up and smiled like it matched. Happens, I said. Jacob offered a stack of napkins. I took them, our fingers not quite touching. The feeling was complicated, but the headline was simple. I refuse the rescue. Outside, the March wind hit the damp fabric and turned it cold. I laughed, aloud and alone, at the absurdity of guarding my dignity with paper napkins. The following week, I tried escalation's less glamorous cousin, documentation. I brought a Post-it with MÄGGIE in block letters. I stuck it to the register. I smiled the way publicists smile during lawsuits. Tina peeled the note off, folded it twice, and slid it under the counter like a tip she didn't deserve. When my drink came, the name said Marilyn, hyphen included, couture cruelty. I caught Jacob's eye, and he gave me a look that said, "Do you want me to say something?" I gave him a look that said, "Not if it turns me into a story you tell later about the girl who couldn't handle a barista." We were fluent in silent negotiation. Here is the thing about steady sugar-sized humiliations. They accumulate. They dissolve in your day until the coffee tastes like apology. The next morning, when she called Margie like a barked command, I felt my patience like a tea bag that had been used too many times. Faint, tannic, pointless. I asked for the manager. He emerged with the practiced pallor of men who have given speeches about our values in the mirror. "I'm sorry you feel that way," he began. And somewhere, a lawyer smiled. "She keeps getting my name wrong," I said. "For 3 years. That doesn't sound intentional. She also keeps serving my drink cold, handing it to other people, and today she shared it with my sleeve." "Training opportunity," he said, nodding to himself, already composing the email to no one. Behind him, Tina polished a portafilter that didn't need it. Our eyes met. She didn't smirk. She didn't have to. The entire system was smirking for her. "Thanks," I said, because women in offices are conditioned to end all interactions on a cooperative note, even when set on fire. I walked out. Jacob followed me onto the sidewalk, awkward in that careful male way. "Hey," he said. "Do you want to try the place on 4th? Their cappuccino is decent." "I'm not boycotting coffee," I said. "Just the existential crisis that comes with it." He smiled. "Coffee without crisis. Radical." We stood there, a beat too long for strangers and not long enough for anything else. He rubbed the back of his neck. "If you want, I can say something next time." "I appreciate it," I said, because I did. "But I think she wants the audience." He nodded. "You're probably right." "I usually am," I said lightly, because pride is a survival skill. Monday brought a new trick. Wrong milk. I said oat. The cup said Marilyn, and the liquid said cow. My stomach is not dramatic, but it is opinionated. I set the cup back on the counter. "Hey, sorry, this is dairy." Tina tilted her head. "Is it?" "Yes," I said. "I can taste it." "You have a very refined palate." She leaned down to the line as if confiding in a child. "Guys, we have a sommelier of lattes." A few polite chuckles. Not many. People mostly want their drinks and their mornings. Not improv cruelty. She remade it, loudly, and then placed it exactly at the far edge of the counter, where I'd have to reach. I did. The sleeve brushed the puddle where she hadn't wiped. "Careful," she said. I took the cup and anchored my hands around it like a lighthouse. Behind me, Jacob said quietly, "That wasn't cool." She shrugged. "I can't help it if Marilyn prefers drama." I didn't turn. I didn't give her the oxygen of my face. I walked out, counted to 10, and kept walking. In the office kitchen later, Zoe watched me stir sugar into a mug like I was scrying. "Tell me you switched cafes." "Not yet." "Why not?" I stared at the swirling, the way the granules spun and disappeared. "Because leaving feels like losing." "Or like boundaries," she said. "You love a boundary." "I do," I said. "I'm going to build one she can't cross." Zoe narrowed her eyes. "Are we speaking in metaphors or—" "Always," I said. "Also, I have a deck due in 90 minutes. "Fine. But promise me you won't swallow this forever. It's not good for your skin." Or your aura. My aura is combination to oily, I said. It can take it. She snorted. You're impossible. The climax of the week came on a Thursday that felt like a Friday, which is to say, everyone was already tired of being heroic. I placed my order, spelled my name, turned away to avoid the theater. When my cup landed on the bar, a young barista I didn't recognize darted forward as if to intercept it. Too late, I saw it. Mediocre Marilyn. The handwriting was Tina's, knife neat, elegant, unmistakable. Silence, the kind that hums. Then a single gasp, somewhere near the pastry case. The new girl blanched. Jacob at my shoulder inhaled like he'd forgotten how air works. I picked up the cup. It was warm. My cheeks were warmer. I held it long enough to feel the humiliation settle in my bones like silt. Then I smiled. Thank you, I said, my voice sugar smooth. Mediocre is still above average. A couple laughs broke loose, not at me. Not this time. Something in Tina's expression flickered. I slid the cup back across the counter. Could you please make it again? The drink, not the commentary. I was just, she started. Reading vibes? I offered. Her jaw tightened. The manager surfaced like a submarine that didn't want to be there. Is there a problem? No, I said, looking him in the eye, my tone the one I use with clients who underestimate me exactly once. There's an opportunity. He remade it himself. It was, to his credit, decent. I took it with a nod that could pass for thanks in poor lighting, and I left. Jacob followed me out again, more determined, less careful. That was awful, he said. Not my favorite performance, I agreed. Do you want me to? No. I looked at the cup, at my name that wasn't, at the future that was starting to contour itself somewhere behind my ribs. I want to do something better than complain. He studied my face. Like what? I smiled. You'll see. I meant it as a joke. But on the walk back to the office, a thought arrived so clean it felt like truth. If they won't spell my name right, I'll put it in lights. Jacob started timing his mornings with mine. I pretended not to notice, but when your favorite latte stalker appears exactly 40 seconds after you push the door open, the pattern's hard to miss. We'd exchange those quick, workday hellos, the kind that live somewhere between politeness and chemistry. The air would hum, soft and charged, and Tina would watch it happen like she was filming a crime scene. Sometimes Jacob would reach the counter before me and pay for both drinks. It's just coffee, he'd say, casual, like men do when they want to test a boundary without admitting they care. And sometimes, when Tina misfired another name grenade, he'd murmur, "She's doing that on purpose, you know." I know, I'd answer, half smiling. But I like watching her creativity evolve. The truth? I liked watching him. The way he tapped his fingers on the lid while waiting like he was drumming up courage. The way he always smelled faintly of cedar and printer ink. And I liked that he never pushed. He'd ask, "Busy week?" or "Big presentation?" and listen as if deadlines were sacred, not excuses. But I was still nursing the soft bruise of my last relationship, the one that ended with a note on my kitchen counter that read, "You're exhausting, but in a kind way." After that, I'd sworn off men who made promises sound like punchlines. Jacob didn't feel like that. He felt gentle, which made him dangerous. One Tuesday, as I waited for my latte or whoever I was that day, Marilyn, Martha, Jacob leaned on the counter beside me. "So, what do you do?" he asked. "I build emotional fortresses disguised as marketing strategies," I said. He laughed. "So, PR? Creative direction," I corrected. "I make boring companies look interesting, and interesting people look bored. Useful skill set. You? I draw boxes for rich people and call it architecture." He smiled, and something in my stomach twitched like it was remembering how. Behind the counter, Tina steamed milk with a violent precision. She looked like a woman frothing her own rage. When she handed me the cup, the name read Magdalene. Magdalene? Jacob said, grinning. Exotic, isn't it? I replied. He smirked, but I could see the question behind his eyes. Why do you let her do that? Because, I thought, this isn't about her anymore. It's about me seeing how much humiliation I can absorb before I finally erupt. One afternoon, Jacob asked if I wanted to grab coffee somewhere else. There's this place on 9th, he said. They spell names right. Tempting, I said. But I'm invested in this social experiment. What's the hypothesis? That women can endure endless microaggressions as long as the foam art is cute. He laughed, and for a moment, it was easy. Until Tina slid his cup forward with his name written in perfectly elegant cursive. Jacob, underlined twice like a love letter. I caught the flicker of satisfaction on her face and felt something sharp shift under my ribs. After that, the daily games escalated. If Jacob and I chatted too long, she'd call Marilyn extra loudly, snapping me back into the spotlight. If he smiled at me, she'd toss him an extra espresso shot on the house. And if I dared to complain, she'd tilt her head and say, "Sorry, babe, it's been a long shift." I told myself I didn't care. I had real problems. Clients, campaigns, a pitch that could make or break my bonus. But every morning, I still walked through that door, still hoped for decency, still left with my dignity in a cardboard cup. Then came the day of the big spill. It was raining. The gray sideways kind that ruins blowouts and hope. Jacob and I arrived almost simultaneously, dripping, laughing, umbrella chaos. He opened the door for me. I thanked him. We shook off the rain together like a movie scene waiting for music. And Tina saw it. The smile she gave me wasn't a smile at all. It was a warning. I ordered, paid, turned to wait. She handed me the drink without a lid. Before I could react, a streak of hot latte hit my sleeve and chest, splattering like liquid punctuation. "Oh no," she said, a mock gasp. My hand slipped. The foam hissed on my skin. My brain scrambled between ow and seriously. Jacob reached for napkins, concern written all over his face. "You okay?" "I'm fine," I said automatically, because women are trained to downplay pain if witnesses are handsome. He frowned. That didn't look accidental. "It's fine." But it wasn't fine. Not the spill, not the power trip behind it, not the way I still forced a smile like this was just a sitcom misunderstanding. Tina leaned across the counter, voice sweet as aspartame. "Guess you'll remember me now, huh, Marilyn?" For a heartbeat, the cafe went silent. Then someone laughed nervously. I took the napkins from Jacob, dabbed my sleeve, and said softly, "Trust me, Tina, you're unforgettable." Outside, Jacob tried again. "Let me get you a towel or something." "I'm fine," I said, though the latte stain felt like a brand. He walked beside me anyway, awkwardly protective. At the corner, he stopped. "You know, she's out of line. You should tell someone." "Who? Her manager?" "He probably calls her talented." "She's jealous," he said. "Of what?" I asked too quickly. He hesitated. "Maybe of how I look at you." My chest tightened. I wanted to laugh, to change the subject, to run. Instead, I said, "Maybe you should stop looking." He blinked, surprised. Did I cross a line? "No," I said, gentler. "But I'm not ready to be someone's reason for conflict." He nodded, thoughtful. "Okay." Then, softer. "But if you ever need someone to spell your name right, I volunteer." I smiled despite myself. Duly noted, architect. Over the next few weeks, our dynamic shifted. Less flirtation, more quiet camaraderie. He'd still smile from across the room. I'd still roll my eyes when my cup said, "Marcia." But there was a distance now, a safety zone. And yet, every morning, Tina kept trying to shrink me, like she needed proof that I was losing. What she didn't know was that humiliation, when aged properly, ferments into ambition. Each sting became data, each insult a blueprint. And somewhere between deadlines and decaf, an idea began to form, a whisper I couldn't unhear. You could do this better. You could do this right. The moment it all clicked was oddly mundane. Late evening, empty cafe, the espresso machine hissing like a tired dragon. I stopped by to grab a takeaway before heading home. The place was nearly deserted. Just Tina behind the counter cleaning, and Jacob sitting near the window, sketching something in his notebook. For once, I thought maybe this would be peaceful, but when I stepped closer, I saw her lean across his table, laughing too loudly, placing her hand on his wrist. He didn't pull away. Maybe he didn't even notice. Maybe he did. It shouldn't have hurt. We weren't anything. But watching her tilt her head toward him, smug, victorious, that hurt. I left quietly, my heart a storm cloud pressed into silence. The rain started again as I reached the corner, the kind that hides tears beautifully, and for the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt awake. Because in that moment, I decided, if she needed the spotlight so badly, I'd give her one. And it would shine right across the street. There's a strange thing that happens when humiliation turns into clarity. The world goes quiet. That night, standing in the drizzle outside Drip Society, watching Tina lean over Jacob's wrist like she was sketching ownership, I didn't feel rage. I felt focus. A year earlier, I might have stormed in, demanded answers, spilled someone's iced macchiato for symmetry. But now I just looked at the glow of their cafe sign and thought, you're replaceable. I walked home under streetlights that flickered like my thoughts. Every step away from that place felt cleaner, sharper, necessary. When I reached my apartment, I peeled off the latte-stained blazer that had become a kind of armor and dropped it straight into the trash. Goodbye, Marilyn, I muttered. Then I made tea, herbal, boring, grounding, and opened my laptop. It started as a joke, a petty fantasy written in the Notes app at 11:43 p.m. If I ever owned a coffee shop, everyone's name would be spelled right. But the longer I stared at it, the less ridiculous it sounded. I knew marketing. I knew people. I knew what customers wanted to feel seen, even if it's just through 3 correct letters on a cardboard cup. I also knew I had savings. A decent amount, actually, 4 years of careful budgeting, canceled vacations, and too many nights eating salad out of Tupperware. At the time, it was meant to be a down payment for a condo. Now it looked like seed money for something better. Revenge, ethically sourced. Over the next few weeks, the idea stopped whispering and started screaming. I toured old storefronts on my lunch breaks. I sat through zoning meetings where every official looked like they'd rather be dead. I researched espresso machines until I started dreaming in pressure bars and extraction ratios. My friends thought I was losing it. Wait, Zoe said one night, wine glass midair. You want to open a coffee shop? As in, willingly enter the service industry you just escaped every morning? Yes, I said, but nicer, warmer, more humane. Humane caffeine? Exactly. No smug baristas, no wrong names, no power plays over oat milk. She blinked. So, therapy with lattes. I grinned. Now that should be our slogan. By August, I signed the lease. It wasn't glamorous, peeling paint, buzzing lights, the faint smell of wet cardboard. But when the realtor handed me the keys, I felt something unclench inside me. Freedom smells like dust and opportunity. I spent every evening after work scrubbing, painting, sanding, building. Zoe helped design the logo. Sleek cursive, a tiny umlaut hovering proudly above the A. It's MÄGGIE. It's very German revenge, she said. It's very deliberate, I replied. The first espresso machine I bought secondhand. The bar stools came from a closing diner. My uncle built the counter out of reclaimed oak because, as he said, revenge should have character. By late November, the soft opening was ready. We posted one teaser photo on Instagram, a latte art heart with the caption, "Where your name matters as much as your coffee." Within a week, the post blew up. Locals tagging friends, office workers reposting with, "Finally, a cafe that gets it." Apparently, everyone had a Tina somewhere in their life. The morning before we opened, I walked across the street, yes, that street, and looked directly at Drip Society. They were still there, still humming along, still serving names spelled like ransom notes. Through the window, I saw Tina at the counter, laughing at something on her phone. Probably a meme about karma. I smiled. Across the road, my own sign flickered to life. "It's MÄGGIE." The umlaut glowed like a crown. Opening day was chaos in the most delicious way. We had a line out the door by 8:10. The playlist was warm and jazzy. The smell of cinnamon clung to the air like a compliment. Every cup went out with perfect spelling, even Caitlin with a Y and an E and a silent Q. When people asked why the name, I'd grin and say, "Because spelling matters." Zoe worked the register, beaming. My barista team, kind, tattooed, caffeinated souls, moved like a symphony. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. Around noon, I saw him. Jacob. He was standing across the street, holding a Drip Society cup, staring at my new sign like it was déjà vu with better lighting. Then slowly he crossed over. "MÄGGIE," he said, reading the sign aloud. "So it is spelled with 2 G's. "Imagine that," I said, wiping my hands on an apron. He smiled awkwardly. "This place is yours?" "Yep. Built it from caffeine and spite." "Looks amazing," he said, glancing around. "Feels better in here." "That's the point." He hesitated, then, "Tina told me you quit coming around. Guess now I know why." I shrugged. Everyone deserves a fresh start. Some of us just make ours official. He chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck, that familiar nervous tick. "Can I buy you a coffee?" I raised an eyebrow. "From here?" "Where else?" He ordered 2 cappuccinos. The barista handed him the cups, each with a name spelled right, obviously. When he looked down and saw Jacob on one and MÄGGIE on the other, he smiled. "This feels poetic." "Don't get used to it," I said. "We're very strict about boundaries here." Later that afternoon, I heard the bell over the door again, and there she was. Tina. Hair darker, eyes sharper, smile still weaponized. "Well," she said, looking around, "guess congratulations are in order." "Guess so," I said evenly. "How's business over there?" She shrugged. "Slower lately. People are weird about loyalty." "Or about names," I offered. She laughed lightly. "Yeah, about that." She pulled a folded paper from her bag. A resume. "I'm actually looking for new opportunities." Thought maybe I held up a hand. "Stop. You spelled my name right this time. That's progress." She blinked. "So, you'll consider it." I smiled, wide and professional. "I'll keep it on file." Then I dropped the paper in the drawer labeled recycling. That night, after closing, I sat by the window with a cup of my own making. Extra vanilla, oat milk, the way I like it. Outside, a Drip Society looked smaller, the lights dimmer. My reflection smiled back at me, tired, proud, whole. People say revenge is bitter, but maybe they've just been brewing it wrong. I took a sip, savored it, and whispered to the empty cafe, "Finally tastes like me." Success doesn't hit like fireworks. It arrives more like morning light, slow, steady, soft enough that you don't notice until your whole world is glowing. Its MÄGGIE didn't explode overnight. Oh, it grew. By the 3rd month, we had regulars who knew the playlist by heart, freelancers who called our corner table their office, and moms who brought their toddlers to watch latte art foam into tiny hearts. And every single person left with a cup that spelled their name correctly. That was the rule. No shortcuts, no close enough. One time, my barista Sam accidentally wrote Sarah instead of Sarah. She caught it before handing it over and redid the whole drink. I didn't have to say a word. That's when I knew this wasn't just a coffee shop, it was a culture. I quit my corporate job 4 months in. The day I handed in my notice, my boss blinked like I'd just announced I was moving to Mars. A cafe. You're leaving a six-figure salary for foam and beans? Exactly, I said. Foam and beans. They're easier to work with than executives. He didn't laugh, but Zoe did. Loudly, proudly, standing by the elevator holding a bouquet of sunflowers like a maid of honor at my emancipation ceremony. You're doing it, she said as we walked out. You're the rom-com we needed. Without the man, I said. She grinned. Even better. The months blurred into cinnamon steam and espresso shots. We added brunch pastries, live acoustic Sundays, and a board on the wall where people wrote kind notes to strangers. One read, "To the girl who comes in every Tuesday with a sketchbook, your curls are goals." Another, "To the guy with the navy suit, you drop your shoulders when you smile." Keep doing that. By July, local influencers started tagging us. It's Maggie vibes trended for a whole week in our small corner of the internet. The sign outside and "It's Maggie" became a landmark. People took selfies under it. I'd watch them from the window and smile. That umlaut, once a petty inside joke, had turned into a symbol of something bigger. Self-respect, brewed daily. Across the street, Drip Society wasn't doing so hot. The crowds thinned. The lights dimmed. Through our window, I'd sometimes catch glimpses. New baristas every month, customers drifting away, a manager pacing on the phone. Karma doesn't rush. It marinates. One morning, Sam came running to the back room, phone in hand. "Boss, you've got to see this." She showed me a local blog headline. Drip Society closes after 5 years. Owner cites tough competition. There was a photo. The windows boarded up. The sign half unplugged. I stared at it for a long moment, then exhaled. Not with glee, not with triumph. Just relief. Zoe burst in a minute later, waving her phone. "You saw it?" I nodded. "You're not even going to celebrate." "I already did," I said, gesturing to the full room. Every day I woke up and didn't feel small anymore. That was the celebration. A few days later, I got an email. From Tina M. Subject, "Congratulations," and maybe, "Sorry." I hesitated before opening it. "Hey Maggie, I saw the cafe closed. I guess I just wanted to say congrats on your success. You clearly knew what you were doing. I was a jerk. I can see that now. Maybe I was jealous. You handled it better than I ever would have. Anyway, no hard feelings. Hope business keeps thriving. Tina." I read it twice, then a third time. There was a time I would have forwarded it to Zoe with 1,000 emojis. Now I just replied, "Hey Tina, thank you. No hard feelings. Hope you're doing okay too." Send, done, not for her, for me. Summer melted into fall. We painted pumpkins gold, served cinnamon lattes, played Dreams by Fleetwood Mac on loop. One afternoon, an older woman came up to me at the counter. "You're Maggie, right? The owner?" "Yes," I said, smiling. She lifted her cup. "Thank you for spelling my name right. It's been 40 years since anyone got it right the first time." I laughed softly. "We take it seriously here." "I can tell," she said. "It's more than coffee, you know. It's respect." After she left, I stood behind the counter, her words echoing louder than the milk frother. Respect. That's all I'd wanted from the start. Every evening after close, I'd sit by the window with my own drink. Oat milk, 2 pumps of vanilla, perfect temperature. The city outside glowed amber and alive. I'd watch people walk by, couples laughing, kids tugging their parents toward the pastry case. Sometimes I'd still think of Jacob, his quiet humor, the way he used to drum his fingers on the cup lid. We hadn't spoken since opening day. He'd faded into the background of my story, and that was okay. He wasn't the villain. He just hadn't been the lesson. A year to the day after opening, we threw a small anniversary event free pastries, live jazz, and a photo booth with a giant neon sign that read, "Be bold, not bitter." The line wrapped around the block. Someone handed me a latte with my name, Maggie, written in perfect looping script. For the first time, I didn't check it twice. I took a sip and smiled. Because this was what healing looked like. Not revenge as punishment, but revenge as proof. Proof that you can be underestimated, humiliated, ignored, and still rise. Proof that you can build something beautiful from the debris of pettiness. Proof that sometimes the sweetest comeback is peace. That night, after everyone left, I locked the doors, turned off the lights, and stood alone in the quiet hum of the espresso machine cooling down. I whispered into the dark, "A here's to the wrong names, the spilled lattes, and every person who thought I wouldn't matter." Then I raised my cup. To getting it right? Finally.